scheduling. The biggest reason is that what you're doing is you're setting up your schedule based on when are the resources available. So you look at each appointment type that you have, and you say what resources are needed for that type of appointment, and then you set all of that information up, and then the system goes out and says you can schedule that type of appointment at any time during the day as long as all the resources you need for that are available. For instance, rather than saying I see new patients at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, basically you can set it up and say I can see a new patient at any time during the day as long as all the resources I need for that visit are available. Resources are people, rooms, and equipment. So basically anything that you need to make that visit happen. All right, resource-based scheduling, I think, is a great way to utilize all the resources in your office to their fullest extent. For instance, you only need the doctor for a certain part of each exam. The rest of that exam is usually done, there's information that's being taken by the technician. Maybe they're out dilating, those kinds of things. So rather than scheduling that entire time with the physician, you're really only using that physician during the time frame that you need them in that exam. So as we go through this, we'll look at, how do you set that up? How do you know when do you need that physician, that type of information. So this webinar is just on how to set up a resource-based procedure, and then there'll be a follow-up one to how to schedule resource-based procedures and some additional information on resource-based scheduling as well. All right, so the first thing to do with resource-based procedures is you need to go out and you need to set up all of your resources. So to set up your resources, you're going to go to File, and then to Resource Scheduling, to Scheduling Setup, and then to Resources. Okay, so this is where you're going to set up all of your resources. So let's just go ahead and set up a new staff member. So we're going to set up Dr. Hodges, and I'm going to call the resource Dr. Hodges. Now you can put a symbol out there, and this symbol, you would have to pull this off the internet, and then that symbol can appear on the schedule next to that resource name, all right? So the next thing we do with the resources, we're going to set them up in a resource group. So every resource needs to be part of a resource group. The reason for that is because sometimes when you're creating the schedule, you're going to use a specific resource. Like if I want to see if I'm a patient and I want to see Dr. Hodges, then you want to set up Dr. Hodges as my physician for that type of exam. However, I can use any exam room in the office, and I could use any technician. So the technicians are set up in a group, as are the physicians, but then you can say, I don't care which technician it is, I can use any technician from the group. So we're going to go ahead and add them to a group. So I'm going to add them to a resource group. Now, one thing to note when you're setting these up, I would never, ever call your resource the same name as your resource group. So you can see I've got a resource group called Physicians and Dr. Hodges. And I've also got a resource name called Exam Rooms, but my exam rooms are actually Exam Room 1, 2, 3, 4 in my resources. I have some called Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3, or I could name the tech as well. Okay, but in here it's called Technician. So never set up your resource name the same as your resource group name, because if you've done something in error, it makes it difficult to find that error. So I'm going to make Dr. Hodges part of the physicians group. I could also make them part of more than one group if I wanted to. All right? So then I'm going to say, when is this resource available? So I'm going to add availability for this resource at a specific location. So I'm going to say what location and what time is this resource available. So when I'm setting up a resource such as a person, I want to be very specific as to when is that resource available. For instance, maybe I have a technician that doesn't work on Thursdays. When I set up the availability, I simply say that that technician is not available on Thursdays. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set up Dr. Hodges, and I'm going to say he's available from 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I'm going to say he's available on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at those times, okay? Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at those times. This is when Dr. Hodges is going to be available. I'm saying on Tuesdays and Thursdays he does surgeries in the morning, and so he's not going to be available in the mornings on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So this availability, again, you could go daily, and you could say, weekdays every however many days, weekdays only. Weekly, you can set up specific days of the week. You can say, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Or you could also set up monthly availability, the first day of every month or the last Wednesday of every month, however it is you want to set up that availability. So I'm going to say, okay here. And now I'm going to add additional availability. So I'm going to add additional availability for the Salt Lake City location, and I'm going to say on Tuesdays and Thursdays he doesn't come in until 1 p.m. and he leaves at 4 p.m. Okay, so he's only available from 1 to 4, and this is going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. All right. Once you've got all the availability set up for this, you can go ahead and say OK here. This is also where you can go in and create exceptions for any dates that may be on vacation or the doctor's going to be out of the office. And this just allows you to see when is this physician available. All right, so it kind of gives you that availability view. This week is mostly up, so it's showing, here's my Friday schedule. So it is showing the information. So I'm going to go back to my general. Okay, when I'm finished, I'm going to say OK. And then in here, again, these are all my resources. So the first thing you're going to do when setting up a resource-based template is you're going to go out and you're going to create all of your resources. All right? So here's my resources. You can see I have 3 exam rooms. If I have more, I can create more. I've got 2 that are waiting room. This is where I'm going to have people wait while they're dilating. So again, you set up whatever resources you want, including, your visual field machines. When you're setting up things like the exam room, you can put that exam room available every single day, doesn't matter, Saturday, Sunday, whatever, from, 5 a.m. to, 11 p.m., whatever it is you want to do, because unless the exam room is the only resource you needed when you set up the template, then it's going to be okay because it's going to look at your other resources. So it finds all the resources and says if they're all available, then we can schedule this type of procedure. All right, so again, you're going to set up all of your resources first. So everything that you're going to need as a resource, you're going to go ahead and set up in here. So you've got all of your resources set up, all of your physicians, your technicians, and you could actually put your technician names in here. That's entirely up to you. You can name these resources however you want to name them, all right? So you can say I've got this Adrian, Dr. Odie, Adrian Odie, or I've got these set up as just Dr. Jones and Dr. Hodges. Just depends on how you want to name those. It's up to you on the naming convention. Once you've got all your resources set up, then your next thing is you're going to want to go and figure out what is needed for each type of exam that you do. It's very important for what's the first step in my exam and what do I need, what's the next step in my exam. You need to kind of think that process through so you can set up your procedures. So now we're going to go ahead and set up a procedure. So I'm going to go to File, Resource Scheduling, and Scheduling Setup, and we're going to go to Procedures. And I'm going to set up a resource-based procedure. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Add, and I'm going to add a resource-based procedure. So then I'm going to name my procedure. Now, I would suggest that you name it first with the doctor's initial, and then with whatever type of exam it is you're going to be doing, okay? So if you're going to do a complete with a visual field, name it complete with visual field. If it's just a complete exam, you can name it just complete exam. New patient, new patient. If it's, corneal abrasion, you can name it the corneal abrasion. And you're going to want to set up as, as many types of exams that you do in your office so that you can have that availability for the resources you need and be able to schedule those appointments whenever necessary. Now, a lot of people ask, does resource-based scheduling save you time and money? I believe that it does. We've got a couple, I have a client that I set up. They went to resource-based scheduling. They had a piece of equipment that moved from office to office on different days, and they used to have a lot of trouble with that because a patient would come into their main office and the equipment wasn't there that day. So then they'd have to schedule that patient to come back in for that diagnostic testing, which upset the patient and didn't make their practice workflow very well either. So they set up resource-based procedures, and then they set up that piece of equipment to be available on the specific days at the specific locations. So then they could never schedule that exam at that office unless that piece of equipment was available. And what they told me was normally they were staying until they closed at 5, but they were usually there till 6 o'clock with patients up until about that time. They were usually behind. The patients were upset because they were behind, and they were paying overtime to all their staff members to stay from that 5 to 6 time frame. When they did resource-based scheduling, they said they were able to see more patients in a day, and they were out usually at 5 o'clock or at the latest about 5:10. And their patients were being seen on time, and it made everybody happy. So that's just one example of how resource-based scheduling can help you in your office. So I'm going to name the procedures, and I'm going to put how many minutes long is this procedure. This can also help you when you're setting expectations for your patient. how long am I going to be at your office? Is it going to be an hour for my visit, 2 hours for my visit? How long is it going to take? Then you're going to go out and actually find your staff physician from your staff physician list. So it's Dr. Jones. I'm going to pull Dr. Jones from my staff physician list. Then the next thing you're going to say is, when is this type of exam available? So, if you only want to do new patient exams on, say, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you can set it up that way. So I'm going to say this particular one is available at the Salt Lake City location from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And when you're putting in the stop time, this is when the last procedure should end. So not when the procedure starts, but when the procedure ends. And I'm going to go ahead and set this up kind of the same as I did on the doctor's schedule for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 5. I'm going to go ahead and only put a start date because I don't want to put an end date on my procedure. Then I'm going to go add more availability for Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay? So then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to say it's only available from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., just like I did my doctor's schedule, although I could have done this one differently, and if the doctor wasn't available, it wouldn't have let me schedule this appointment. So Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 4. Once I've added all my availability for all my locations, then I'm going to move on to doing my steps. So what is the first step in each procedure? So that's where I kind of have to sit down and maybe talk to some other staff members, and maybe I could do some studies on it before I actually set up my resource-based procedures. So I'm going to add a step. So this is the first thing that happens as part of this exam. So I'm going to say workup, which means the technician's going to go in and take their information, make sure we've got the correct allergy information, find out, what's the reason for their visit, all that type of information. And I'm going to say that this takes 7 minutes. You want to know how long does this typically take? And then I'm going to go ahead and add either a resource group or a resource. So I'm going to go ahead and add a resource group, and I need an exam room because I don't want to examine this patient out in the hall. And then I'm also going to need a technician, but I don't care which technician, so I'm going to add a resource group and say any technician, okay? So now we can see that my resource is defined and my resource is available. And that's important to know, that these resources are not only defined, but that they're available during the given time frame that you're setting up this particular procedure. So that's my first step. I just need the technician and the exam room. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my next step, and I don't know if this is really in the right order, but I'm going to say that we're going to dilate the patient. Okay, for the dilation, I'm going to give us 25 minutes. And I don't need the exam room now or my technician, so I'm just going to add a resource group, and I'm going to add my waiting room. That's kind of what I've put in here to say this is where people go to wait, and I could add, some other space that I have. So I'm just going to say I've got this availability for this patient to go wait while they're dilating. All right, so then I'm going to add my next step, and it's going to be the physician exam. So I'm going to actually just name this one exam. I'm going to say this takes 5 minutes. Again, it's up to you based on your physician. If the physician takes 5 minutes, if this physician takes 10 minutes, you can set it up that way. Now, in this case, I'm going to add a specific resource because they want to see actually Dr. Jones and not just any physician that we have, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add Dr. Jones, and then again, I still need an exam room, so I'm going to go out and add my exam room as well. All right, so this is what I need for my next step. Then I'm going to add a final step here, so I'm going to add one more step, and I'm just going to say it's the follow-up. And I'm going to have the technician come in and, follow up with the patient. And we're going to say this particular part takes 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and add my resource group. Again, I need an exam room. And again, I don't care which technician. I'm going to add another resource group of technicians. Now, if it was something where maybe I was going to have somebody schedule surgery and there's a specific tech that does that, I could add a resource and make that specific tech be part of that. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and add my technician group here. And again, it's defined and available, and I'm going to say OK. All right, so now I've got my 4 steps. Now, it adds up the time for me. So it says it's 42 minutes, so I need to change my max minutes up here to be 42. So then this allows me to tell someone who's coming in for this type of exam that it's going to be about 45 minutes. So they can expect to be here 45 minutes to an hour for their exam. All right, so you want to make sure that you look back at here and say, OK, here's my exam room, my technician. This is what I need. They exist and they're available for each of my different steps. Now, something else to know here. I've got this patient in an exam room. Then we've got them going to the waiting room and then back to an exam room. The system will keep them in this same exam room all the time. So it will free up the exam room for this 25 minutes while they're out dilating, but it's going to bring them back to the same exact exam room. So it's going to bring them back to the same exact exam room. It's also going to use the same technician throughout. So it's going to find a technician that's available for that entire time frame or during those specific time frames, and it's going to keep that technician every time. All right? So don't worry that people are going to be, shuffled around in different exam rooms. They're going to see different technicians. The system tracks all that. Also, the system automatically goes through your resources and uses the next one. So if you use Technician 1 this time, the next time it goes, it's going to look for Technician 2 and then Technician 3. Now, if they don't happen to be available, it's going to rotate through the group again. But it actually will use your, exam rooms in a rotating fashion. It's going to use your technicians in a rotating fashion, so you're going to be able to use those on a scheduled basis, and everybody's going to have that same time frames available and be in there for those, for that entire time. So it's really going to use your resources to their fullest extent. Okay, so here, then you can choose a color for it to show up on your schedule. So I can go ahead and choose a color if I want and say okay, and then I can also choose a font color, and then it's going to show me the information here. So I've created my resource-based procedure. I've created each step in my procedure. I've made sure that the people that I need or the resources I need are available for each step of my procedure. And when I'm finished, I can hit the close button. And then I've created this resource-based procedure. Now, until I refresh, it's going to be at the top here. So if I happen to get out and I didn't want to, I can actually just click Edit and go right back into it. So again, very important. The first thing is set up all of your resources, figure out what your resources are, make sure they get set up, and then go ahead and figure out for each type of exam that we do, what are the steps in the exam, and who are the people, the resources, what do we need to complete each step in that exam. And then you can set up, the different procedure types. Now, a lot of times people will say, especially with like new patient exams, something like that, hey, I don't want those new patient exams I don't want to do more than 6 new patient exams in a day. Well, you can set that up as well, because although it allows me to schedule this, in this case, this complete exam at any time I want during the day, as long as all these resources are needed that are needed for it are available, I can also set limitations on that. So if you go to the CPT codes tab, you can do a couple of things. Number one, you can right-click and say, usually when we build this out, we build this particular CPT code. Okay, this is really just used in our monthly scheduling template, so you can kind of see, what would be the cost, or what is the cost normally, that what are we, getting for this piece of the exam. It's just for the exam part, not for everything, but for the exam itself. So I can set up a CPT code to say this is what we normally bill. Doesn't matter. It's not going to go on your out and charge this or anything. It's just a place I'll show you at the end if we have a minute, where you can look at this on a monthly schedule and you can see where it actually will show you dollar amount. Then this is down here where you can set up some rules to say, maybe I only want to be able to do this complete exam. I'm going to say, 8 times in the morning and 8 times in the afternoon. So I'm going to just put in like an AM limitation, and then I'm going to be able to limit this. So I'm going to limit it to, and I'm going to say 8 procedures every day. So you have choices here. So how many procedures, and then every minute, every hour, every day, every week. Okay? And then the system's going to say, so if I tried to do 9 of these in the morning, it's going to say, no, you can't. It's not going to allow me to do it because I can only do 8. All right? And I'm going to just say daily. All right, so then I'm going to have it start here. I can also put an until if I want, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this at 7 to 5. And I'm not going to, actually I'm going to make this be 7 to 12 because this is my morning. So I'm going to say I only want 8 between 7 and 12. And then I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to add another one for the afternoon. So I'm going to add another rule that says PM limitation. And maybe in the afternoon I only want to do 6. So I'm going to do 6 in the afternoon. And I'm going to say in a day, and again I'm going to say daily. And in this case I'm going to say from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. will work. All right? So then I'm going to say okay. So now what it's saying is, although I can book this procedure anytime I want, as long as all the resources are available, it's only going to let me book 8 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon. all right, during those time frames that I set up. So, 7 to noon and then 1 to 5. So it will only let me set up. Now, it's really not going to let me do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays because they're only there till 4 o'clock. But it would let me do 6 before that 4 p.m. time frame, all right? So this is where you can go in and say, although I want to do these every day, I want to limit how many of this particular type of exam I'm doing during a day, a week, even down to the minutes, okay? So now we've got this set up. I've got my procedures set up. I've got my CPT code in there. I've got my rules. And then I can also create exceptions for this procedure here. So I can set up exceptions for my resources. I can also set up exceptions for my procedure. If I needed to, not have this procedure, maybe the doctor just doesn't want to do this particular procedure on some specific Thursday, I could actually set that up and add that here and say, okay, on this Thursday, he doesn't want to do this particular procedure at all. So if I don't put a begin or end time, then it's going to make that be all day long. He's not going to do this particular type of procedure. And I just hit OK. I could put a note in here. If I wanted a note, I don't have to put one in there. And so on this date, it's not going to let me schedule this type of procedure at all. Okay, so set up your steps, set up your CPT code and rules, and any exceptions. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. And there's my procedure again there at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. Now I'm going to open up the resource-based scheduling just so you can see what it looks like out there, but I'm not going to show you how to book those appointments in this particular webinar. I'm going to go ahead and click on resource-based procedures. I'm going to go find my TLJ complete exam, and this is showing me when it's available. So this schedule always goes for however many days you have. I have mine set up for 5 days. This lighter color here is where my procedure is available. Okay, so it's never available on Saturday or Sunday. Remember, it's only available Thursday afternoon, but Friday and Monday, basically all day. Okay, so this is where I could go out and actually book those appointments. But again, I'm not going to show you that as part of today's webinar. However, I am going to go out and show you how you can get to that calendar that I was talking about. So if you go to either resource or template-based scheduling, you can look at this month at a glance calendar, and you can see what procedures are scheduled in your office. Okay, so you can see here's procedures that are scheduled, each one, and how many of that type of procedure were scheduled on that particular day. And then at the bottom, it gives you a total for everything. All right, so down here at the bottom, it gives you a total for each type of exam, and how many of those have you got scheduled throughout the day. What the CPT code does for me, it allows me to go here, and I can show expected revenue for anything that I have a rate schedule set up for, and anything that I've set a CPT code for. So then you can see it changes it from how many of that type of exam to a dollar amount. So that's where you can go see that scheduling month at a glance. And that's where those CPT codes that you can put in either on template-based or resource-based can give you some additional information. All right? So that is how you set up a resource-based procedure. So again, you need your resources first, then you need to figure out what steps are part of each type of exam, and then you're going to set up that resource-based procedure with each of the steps that you need for that. Now, if something changes and you need to go back in and change it, you can go back at any time and go ahead and change that. Just go back out to your procedures. I'm going to find my TLJ procedure, and I can edit it. So if I needed to add another step or I needed to change the time frames here, maybe I just, maybe the doctor, when we're doing it, it's taking him actually longer than we initially put in here. So then I can actually change this to be 7 minutes, and I've changed my procedure. Then I'm going to want to go ahead and change my maximum minutes here, so that I know that, I can only schedule this, when all the resources available, that it's going to take about 44 minutes for this type of exam. You could also add another step in here, or if you notice, if you right-click, you can also promote or demote a step. So if you put these in not in order, you can actually change the step procedure. So if you wanted the dilation to happen after the physician, then you can actually demote the step. It says, are you sure? Yep. And then I've got my workup, my exam, then the dilation, and then the follow-up. All right? So you can come in here after the fact and change these, add steps, edit steps, delete steps, promote or demote steps. So you can go in at any time and kind of change this procedure, change the time frames, and tweak it a little bit. All right? So that is, again, how to set up resource-based procedures in Management Plus.